Good morning. My name is Kavugo Kamau. I am a clinical pharmacist by training and also a menopause practitioner. I am licensed in Kenya and in Texas, and that is where I basically do what I do. I am also the founder of the Women's Health Cafe, which is how many members are here from our Women's Health Cafe? Wave your hands and thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are very popular, by the way. The Women's Health Cafe is a women's educational, informational, advocacy space. And the reason why I started that group, and I started with just me on November 29th, 2023, was because of experiences I had with other women. And of course, for me, menopause also became a retroactive kind of story because I was seeing all these things and I was talking to all these women, and I realized many of the women were clueless about a lot of things with their body, even their anatomy. So I started the group, we started it, we grew, we just started growing. But I think a lot of the women started off before that because we started having a monthly menopause support group meeting. Our first meeting, and I think Dr. Monda, were you there? Who was there on the first meeting? It was in September of 2023. And then we have had monthly meetings ever since, and we meet in different places. Now, why was it called the Women's Health Cafe? Is because in my other life, I'm a caterer. And so I thought, how about we just create a very safe space for women to come, probably have a coffee and have a conversation about what's going on with them. So that was just the only information about why the cafe. But I think it worked pretty well because a lot of the meetings we held around a meal, a drink, or something, which kind of made the ladies feel a lot more comfortable, I guess. So it is a WhatsApp group. It started off as a WhatsApp group, and of course it has grown, and now we are at max. We cannot take in any more. I have a waiting list of 302 women, and as of today I only have 3 slots. And usually those slots happen by mistake. If your WhatsApp kicks you out and you have to whatever, you're just thrown out automatically, then your space becomes available. And many women come back and say, oh, but Bugo, my WhatsApp gave up on me. I'm like, it's so hard now to come right around. So it's really not a fair system. So we'll find a way that will make it fair, especially for those who have been there for a long time. But the group on WhatsApp has 2,000 women. Today we are 1997. Like I said, we have 3 open slots. And we just keep growing. So I had to move us to social media. We have a Facebook page, we have a LinkedIn page, we have an Instagram page, we have a lot of other ways that we are attracting. But those other avenues allow men. And the reason why this one was women only is because we needed to create a safe space. And I think many women can relate when we say, sometimes men make us uneasy, right? And we're not able to really say what we want to say. There are a few people who snuck in there. There was actually a clinical officer from somewhere, and he said, please, just let me stay so I'll be able to help my patients. And I said, no, you just have to join the other ones. So it's a women's only space. And then, of course, we broke it down because menopause is just one of those things that we go through. There's a lot of other things that we go through. So within the community, there's subgroups. There's a mental health group. There's a metabolic health group. There's a gynecology group, which captures everybody. That one fills up, and I don't know what to do with that one because every woman falls under that one. What other groups do we have? We have co-parenting because a lot of us mothers are dealing with being single mothers and those kind of things. We just created a divorce one, and incidentally, this month's support group meeting, which is next weekend, is going to be about how perimenopause and menopause may be affecting our marriages and relationships. And I think we already talked about parenting. Parenting is a special one when you're in perimenopause and menopause. So there's about 13 subgroups within that. So somebody asked me, how do you create this safe space? How do you make sure that, and for those who've been there from the beginning, I think we had to set the tone really early, no judgment. Don't come here and say, but you're so this, or but you're so that. We don't need to hear that. I just came, I stated what I'm feeling, and we support you. So it's important that we are here to support you, not to judge you, not to make you feel bad about what it is you said. And then we have a group called Sex and Orgasm, which is actually the most popular of the groups. And that one we had to tone down the porn. There used to be porn in the beginning, and I'm like, this is not what we're about. But we talk about sexuality, we talk about all those things that we need to be talking about. And incidentally, I guess because it's a group curated by me, a lot of the women are that same age group. I'm 50, so the majority, even those who are very active, are between 45 and 55. But we do have, our youngest member in the group is 22. And we do have mother-daughter, you know, but those ones become very complicated because I don't think you want to listen to your mother talking about how she was having wild sex in Mombasa last week, you know. But some of them are comfortable. So we do have mother-daughter groups. And I think what I've learned from that group is women just need sisterhood. You know, if anything, I think sisterhood covers half the job. Then the rest is now share with me what you want. And this group has grown just by word of mouth. It's you go, you tell your sister about it, you go tell your auntie about it, you go tell your mom. There's a lot of people who say, I just want my mom to join it, you know. And so there's been really no advertising, no nothing. It's just sisters bringing sisters, bringing sisters, bringing sisters. And that's been very encouraging. And I want to say, I mean, and the ladies will give their experience from the group, but I want to call up the members who are going to come here today and talk about their lived experiences. You know yourselves. Get up. And I've really tried to make this, I've asked them to keep it very short because we don't have very much time. But when they shared their stories, and some of them I already know their stories, go ahead. Some of them I already know their stories, and I'm like, but your story is so unique, but your story is so unique, and your story, our stories are all unique, right? Our menopause journey is going to be so different from the next and the next and the next. So I couldn't pick which of these to have a conversation with. But now that they're here, we shall rush them through.
Good morning. You can hear me. Good afternoon, right? My name is Ruth Musembi, and I'm a woman in midlife. Now, that's how I'm introducing myself nowadays. And I'm going through, I think now I might have entered menopause, but I've been on perimenopause for some years. And I have a story, so I wrote it down, and I'll read it. It's very short, but to say that my life has changed since I joined this group. Let me read my story and then I can add one or two things. So it is titled, It Takes a Village, My Menopause Transformation. So you know the way in Africa we say it takes a village to bring up a child? I feel it would need to take a village. For example, today we are in this village for us to turn around the tides and make sure we are living the life that we deserve. So it truly takes a village to find solutions for menopause challenges. For me, that village has been Women Health Cafe. If it were not for WHC, I would never have discovered Dr. Lois Newson, one of UK's leading menopause doctors. At my very first WC hangout, I sat next to a lady doing a survey on menopause apps. I wasn't using any app, but that's how I found the Balance app. That simple moment opened a whole world of knowledge and hope to me. Still, in that village of WHC, a Kenyan board-certified gynecologist who is right here shared our testimony of how hormone therapy had transformed our life. She said something that struck me deeply. We have a choice. That testimony changed everything for me. I later went to see her. I did my research. And finally, I got the right prescription from a doctor at Aga Khan University Hospital. 10 months later, I can stand here as one of the happiest midlife women in this room. My hot flashes are gone. My brain fog has lifted. I sleep 7 hours every night. Yes, and that's a true story. And instead of waking up every hour. When I went to see my doctor at Aga Khan, I had a log. I was logging every time I wake up at night. I log 11:05, 12:06, 1:07, like that. I was waking up every hour, and you can imagine. I go to work, I can't work. I'm tired. I'm not productive, and my energy incredible. My productivity has soared, and I feel alive again. And that's why today, at the very first menopause conference in Kenya, I say this: we cannot be silent. Women in midlife need support. They should not pause their lives. They deserve to live healthy, joyful, and fulfilled lives. As a communicator and an educator, I'm committed to amplifying these conversations until every woman knows she has choices, she has hope, and she has a village. Thank you very much, Ruth Musembi. And as my parting shot, thank you. My parting shot is that I've started a podcast. It has debuted today. It is called Men of Peace. So I added the word peace because, in as much as it may sound like an oxymoron, but that is what we are going for. We are going to be peaceful. We are going to be happy, healthy. We will not just live a long, troublesome life. We are going to live a long, peaceful, happy life. So check me out on LinkedIn, on YouTube. I'm going to be hosting doctors. I'm going to be hosting all of us just to share our stories, because I am in the communication space. I'm an educator. And I tell you what, now I'm back to school. I had stopped my PhD in 2022. I couldn't read. I couldn't understand anything anymore. As we speak, I'm defending my dissertation next week. Thank you so much.
Well done, well done. I remember when I first met her, I think it was during the Menopause Day event last year, and you were in the corner there just trying to disappear, but you had so many questions. And I'm so happy to hear that you found help and you are thriving now. That is a true testament. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Miss Elsie?
Sorry. Hello. You can hear me? So my name is Elsie Wandera, and in addition to being a member of this community, I am the founder of the Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, and I am also the co-chair of the World Endometriosis Organizations. So that's the hat I will come in wearing, and just talking about that experience from that perspective of entering perimenopause because of the disease progression. So I lost my ovaries at about the age of 40. Due to the disease progression, I don't have any children. Did I want children? Absolutely. But do I want them now? Hell no. It's already enough. Like, we're going through enough. I don't think that's something I want to go through. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to work with a doctor, Dr. Charles Muteshi, who one was my gynecologist, but also really just held my hand even as I entered this new stage. And I remember when we had come out of theater, he just, so I was excited because I was like, okay, so how did you fight that endometriosis? What did you find? You know, then he just held my hand nicely and calmly, and he told me, Elsie, I'm so sorry. We could not save your ovaries. And I think at that moment, it didn't hit me, but it hit me later. It hit me at baby showers and at all of those spaces. That's not the point of this conversation. The point is to, one, recognize that there's one gentleman who, from a clinical perspective, who helped me get into this space. Although I have beef with him because he didn't talk to me about, the cognitive changes, the sleep disruption, the low libido, the UTIs. Because I would call him, I'd be like, hey, I'm having all of these UTIs. What's going on? I'm not sexually active. And can you see, like, our problem? We've already linked, like, UTIs to sexual activities. Is it necessary? No. So I'm walking around feeling so shameful, but this doctor has the answer for me. So I celebrate that, but I recognize that there is a gap from at that level with our doctors. The second knowledge gap, I think, for me, and as I talked about what I have been going through, which is endometriosis, that was a double gap. So I had to learn and do some investigation for myself about what menopause is, what are the symptoms, and, come to learn now that I also have eczema because of this. But, this was, like, when I remember talking to my mother, she said, there was no point of having this conversation. This is private, And there lies also the generational gap. So there are many gaps at every level and at every corner we're turning. There is no care. And I loved what Honorable Njoki Ndungu said about the workplace. And that's another gap because, when we're going through this brain fog and we're going through the hot flashes, there's a room and we're celebrating, organizations that are providing for women who are in their pregnancy stage and require a room to rest. But what about these rooms for the women who, like us, are going through these challenges in our most productive and reproductive years? So I think that's something else. And I think if those were the two things that we could address, I think at a policy level, but I think I love the space that we're in, WHC. I'm always sharing my story. Like me, I crack these women up. Like I share about like why, like if can we find an answer for, just improve my libido? Like I've suffered. I've already carried the cross. Can't I just enjoy this sunset years, with a man next to me? I don't want to slap him. I don't want to kick him out of my room. Can we just find something for me? So I think there is something that as a country we're doing well. We have got a community health strategy. Why can't we integrate that and look at this condition that we are calling, and I'm glad that there's this conversation at a national level. Why can't we integrate that information and empower the community health workers to actually, as they go from village to village, let them have this conversation? Because they talk about, they're doing stuff on the antenatal care and various other topics. This should be part of that. And I also would love to urge, because the people who are responsible in terms of shaping the policy are in this room, include the reproductive disorders in that in that curriculum or the information pack that you share with them. But I think the Women's Health Cafe is also great. But I think what we need to do is we need to find a place to share the information, the insights that are being shared from at that level, and then turn it into policy or something that can help the generation. Because we need to end, and I'm finishing, we need to end, we need to prevent that transference of silence to the next generation. They cannot suffer in silence. They can't suffer in silence because they're going through the period. They can't suffer in silence because their periods are painful. We're normalizing pain. They can't suffer in silence because menopause is shida ya wamama, and the wamamas are not talking about it. Can we start talking about it and let's end the silence? I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Elsie. Thank you. And that is a challenge that I've been having. I'm like, we're doing a very good job. When you look and do surveys of the women in the Women's Health Cafe, they're all now very knowledgeable and they ask questions and they get answers. And it's actually more a peer-led kind of space. But then I'm like, the other day somebody asked me, so can you go to Gikambura and give those women a talk in Kikuyu? And I said, my goodness, that's gonna be hard. But how do we reach those other women? And I like what was spoken to about earlier. There is an option, and we have to just figure out to get to every woman. Yes, Nimo.
Hi everyone, my name is Nimo Gedahu, or Werimo Gedahu. I think I'm knee deep in menopause. I missed the bit when you're explaining about menopause. I also want to apologize for saying that I know a lot about menopause, because after hearing the women speaking, I don't think I know that much about menopause. I really, with Kifwambele, I thought I did. Now, for me, I remember, so I'm a yoga teacher, and I remember having some shoulder pain from nowhere, and I've gone to my doctor and I've said to him, I'm finding it really difficult to teach yoga and to do my daily yoga. And he says to me, here's some dawas, and took the dawas, and the pain went, but came back. And so I started really wondering what's happening for me. Kumba, it's frozen shoulder. I'd never heard of frozen shoulder. I'd heard of hot sweats, cold sweats. Brain fog was a new one, because I didn't know that as well. I think, like Honorable Njoki, I thought I was losing my mind at a young 51 years old. So this left me second-guessing myself. It left me second-guessing myself. and wondering if I'd somehow caused this injury, when in reality, it was my body telling me there's a bigger hormonal shift that's actually happening. Silence, the lack of information connecting menopause to issues truly left me feeling confused, unsupporting, and carrying unnecessary guilt. Now, I'm doing the questions. I did 1, 2, and 3, so I didn't write the questions, though. I have the answers. So question 2, I wrote, what would have made a biggest difference is clear information and honest conversations from healthcare providers. So if the doctor had explained symptoms like frozen shoulder, brain fog, or night sweats were part of menopause, I won't have wasted so much energy blaming myself or worrying or hunting for answers. Now I work from home, so I'm my own boss. So HR policies or office adjustments don't affect me in any which way. But what I do need is access to knowledgeable medical support, affordable treatment options, and spaces where women can connect and share. That would have made the transition feel less like wandering in the dark. And thank beep for WHC. I've been told by my 14-year-old I've got a potty mouth, hence the beep. Number 3, if I could send one message to policymakers, it would be this. Take menopause out of the private nuisance box and treat it as public health. Fund training for the frontline clinicians, subsidize effective treatments, require menopause-friendly workplace policies, and run education so women aren't gaslit by the system. I would go so far as saying make it a part of the curriculum in reproductive health in schools, which I hear has been removed, I think, which is a huge disappointment, and not just for girls, but for boys as well. Because like we've seen, we need the men in this journey that we're walking. It's not just the women who need to walk it alone. And while medication has its place, and I hope this is not what Anne meant by what's the word? My brain fog is showing. The quacks. And while medication has its place, please don't overlook body-based therapies like somatic therapy and trauma-informed practices. These aren't luxuries, they're essential tools that help regulate nervous system, ease pain, and rebuild women's sense of connection with themselves during one of the most destabilizing transitions in their life. Asanteni sana, and tuendelee with this journey of ours of menopause.
Thank you very much, Nemo. And I have to mention, Nemo is also a psychotherapist. She doesn't like us to know that because she wants to be more of a somatic yoga trainer. But I must say that she's one of the few women, or one of the women who has managed her symptoms quite well without any hormone treatment. And it actually goes to what Dr. Atwoli was saying earlier, that there's other things you can do. There's lifestyle modifications you can do that will help improve your symptoms. But as practitioners, we meet you where you are and then try and get you to the next, right? Wairimo?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wairimo Karuri, and for the purposes of this conversation, I am a user and survivor of psychiatry in this country. I've had psychiatric symptoms since I was about 17. I'm now 49. And the diagnosis was finally done 15 years ago. In the 15 years, I have been on medication for about maybe 10 of those years, 10, maybe 9, 10 years, because I've taken 2 drug holidays. And the reason why I take the drug holidays, one was 1.5 years, the other one was 4 years, is because nothing has ever worked for me in terms of psychiatry, like psychiatric medication. We've tried everything. In fact, during the worst season of my mental health in 2021, I was admitted 4 times, all voluntary admissions for severe suicidal ideation. And we ended up doing ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, which did nothing for me. In that season, I went without showering for 63 days. And so for me, mental health is not a stylish diagnosis, it is a debilitating condition. I've never been able to build a career. I've run businesses that have all risen to the level of my non-functionality because we can't rise above that. I have basically winged it as a mother. I think that's the one thing that I've been able to do. I have a 26-year-old daughter. But overall, there are many things that I've not been able to do because of my mental health. And basically, after ECT in 2021, we spent a year, 12 months, with my doctor trying to trigger hypomania because the biggest presenting diagnosis is bipolar 2. And the depression is what is really, really bad. And so we spent a year with him trying to, like, I was on the strongest antidepressants possible. And by the time we gave up after a year, it was because I had been on the strongest 3 at the highest dosages without a mood stabilizer, and I was still in bed. And so I told him, this is just expensive P. I am not working. My medical bills were, my medicine bill alone, and I have a daughter who also has mental health diagnosis, was 32,000 a month. And that was wholesale, which is about 30 to 50% less than retail. So at that point, I said, okay, since this is not working, let me go off the meds again. And so I've been off meds since November 2022. There are many things I've tried because the one thing I decided when I first got my diagnosis in 2010 is I'm going to take every single shot in the dark for my health. And so I've tried everything. I've tried diet modification. The 4 years I went without medication, the first drug holiday. I had a lot of lifestyle changes. When I went into that particular depression that led me back to medication, I had been exercising for 9 solid months. I'd work at Jaffrey every day for 9 months. Like if I miss a day, it's a day or two. So a lot of the conventional wisdom and interventions don't work for me. And so the vicious cycle has basically been depression, which leads to non-functionality, which leads to lack of productivity, which leads to financial instability, which leads to depression because financial instability is my biggest trigger. And so there are two things. There are many things that made me take the MHT shot in the dark. First, Bugo knows that she's the only person who could have gotten me to look at menopause. I said, we shall do this, we shall ignore it, we shall close our eyes, it shall pass, and then we shall go back to normal. But when I joined WHC, I started interacting with the content, but I never really followed up. Now, one of the biggest impairments is actually cognitive. My executive function and my cognitive faculties were at almost 0. And what I mean by that is, in one of the times that I went back to school to try and finish my degree, I was on a university quiz show, and we were first runners up in Africa. But a couple of months later, and for the past about 13 years until very recently, I'd walk into quiz shows and my brain is completely blank. And I realized that is actually one of the reasons why it took me so long to try and finish my degree, because I'd walk into an exam room and I know this stuff and I cannot remember anything. So the cognitive decline for me has not just been in the past, like say 5 or 6 years. It's been for a long time. So the reason why I decided to try MHT is because, one, my daughter, who has mental health diagnosis, has PMDD, which is basically a mental health diagnosis caused by reproductive hormones. And so I thought to myself, if we share a lot of genetic material, and this she has mental health issues that are based on her reproductive health, which is terrible, maybe this would work for me. The second one was a conversation I had with somebody who is in the queer space. They're a trans person, assigned female at birth, and they were transitioning from assigned female at birth into male. And so they were on hormone therapy which was testosterone. And they have about maybe 10 mental health diagnoses. And so they were actually doing very well on testosterone. And then they stopped the testosterone because they were getting secondary characteristics like a deeper voice and a beard, which they didn't want, and also because of the cost of the testosterone. And within less than 2 weeks, they had crashed, they had even lost their job. Like they were completely non-functional. So I said, okay, if that person's mental health is being affected by hormones, maybe this is also something for me. And so now I'll share my experience on MHT. It's been 3 months. We hit 3 months on Monday. Because of all the things that go with debilitating mental illness, I had to start on the cheapest, lowest band, which is what we call sequential, which means that you take 14 days straight of estrogen, and then you do 14 days straight of progesterone. Now, Kabugo and my family pharmacist and my best friend, my daughter, are watching in fascination because the estrogen pushes me into a depression and non-functionality. And the progesterone throws me into hypomania, including hypersexuality. In fact, I hadn't figured out what was going on with my body. The hypersexuality is the one that gave me an inkling because that comes with hypomania. And so I was like, okay, this is actually something that is affecting across that way instead of this way. Like the MHT is actually affecting whatever Professor Liko is calling my brain soup. Yeah? And so the other person who really inspired me when we had a conversation was actually you, Ruth. Because when you told me that you had actually had to defy your PhD and then you had gone back after being on MHT, I think the time we were talking about that, you'd been on it for 6 months. I said, okay, maybe even all the stuff that I've been unable to do with my brain, maybe this is part of the solution. Because if I wasn't holding this paper, my brain would be glitching. There are actually times when my brain glitches to the point where I'm giving a presentation, like in some of the work I'm able to do, and I cannot remember what I was meant to say next. And it's not a memory issue. It's that my brain has completely blanked out. So what I'll say is we need more accessible information and MHT. Because you see, you can imagine if I didn't have the knowledge I have, because I say I'm my own best doctor, I'm the one who knows what goes on in my body. If I didn't have the knowledge that I have, I can't imagine if someone is put on MHT, maybe has a latent mental health conversation going on there, and it completely ruins their life because nobody's looking at the mental health. So there needs to be a lot of integration of the disciplines. The second thing, and this I think is for a lot of us who are, I guess most of us who are perimenopausal or menopausal are older, but I also know that the people who go into perimenopause even at 30, the one thing I'd really encourage you to do is please ditch sugar. Like, I can't say it any other way. Because one of the things that happens for me is ever since I got rid of, actually, now for you guys, I'm saying ditch sugar. For me, I'm saying I ditched carbohydrates. Yeah, like I don't take any carbs at all. And what that has done is, I think it was you, I can't remember your name, who was saying how the visceral fat, that's the one thing I've not had to deal with. I actually have no lifestyle illnesses. I don't have diabetes. I'm not pre-diabetic. I am not hypertensive. My heart is perfectly fine. And for a woman who's 49, that's a bit unlikely. So ultimately, I'll say that the disciplines, especially now in my corner, mental health and probably gynecology and endocrinology, need to sit and have a conversation, because when you look at these things in isolation, they don't make sense. Yes. But if you try and say, okay, because menopause has a laundry list of like 70 symptoms and they keep growing, yeah? So if we can look at those symptoms and maybe try and figure out which ones could be affected in which direction, we'd maybe do more. The other thing that I'll say is we need more menopause advocates within the mental health space, because I'm in a lot of mental health groups by virtue of the fact that I've been in that world forever. And I feel like there are so many women who've been left behind. Some of them, the diagnosis comes back as fibromyalgia. There are all sorts of things going on there. And yet, if this is the solution, like if I do another 3 months and another 3 months and we get to a year, and I find that, let's say, when 70% of my symptoms have resolved, I think we need to take a look in that direction. Yeah.
Thank you, Wairimu. I forgot to mention that the Women's Health Cafe is a gender-safe space. I think she mentioned something about that. Yes, we are a gender-safe space. And thank you for that. Wairimu, I wish you all the best. We are walking this together. Thank you. Yes, Mokami.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mokami, and I want to talk about, I know over here it says menopause, turning the pause into applause. I want to talk about menopause's younger millennial sister, perimenopause, because I see a lot of younger women in this room who probably think I have time. People are talking about their 50s, people are talking about their 60s. We will deal with this, or science will have caught up by the time I get there. And so I want to share my experience regarding that. See, the thing about perimenopause is that it sneaks up on you. There is no test. You go to the doctor, there's nothing, there's no one day you're like, this feels weird. It's just a slow, gradual accumulation of symptoms. So in your mid 30s, maybe your early 30s, maybe your late 30s, all of a sudden, you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's weird, but maybe you're stressed, work, whatever, right? All of a sudden, your periods are a bit heavier. That's not a problem. That's another problem. All of a sudden, you're gaining a little bit of weight that you weren't planning on, right? It's a slow accumulation of symptoms, and it's very hard to accept what's happening. And this is what's happened to me and all my friends. I still have friends to this day who can't remember my name and are saying, I'm not in that thing. It's something else. I'm tired from work. I don't remember your name because I'm tired, not because I'm in perimenopause. And the other thing about this, the stage at which it happens is when you're at the prime of your life, right, as a woman. So you've probably gotten the job you want, you're financially where you want to be, you're at the top of everything, right? So all of a sudden, you are not able to concentrate in the office, and you're now a director, you're now CEO, you're now manager. You're wondering what is happening. This is when I should be showing them what I can do. And then all of a sudden, you're like, I can't sleep, I can't focus, I'm tired. All of these things are just a slow, gradual accumulation. And it sucks. That's really, that's really it. So what happens? What did I do? A lot of my friends, what did we all do? We just go into denial because this is something that happens for your mother's generation. We're just in denial. This is not happening. For one of the reasons we go into denial is because there's a lot of age stigma, right? The other thing that's really hard to accept is that you are aging. You know, some of us just thought that we would reach 38 and just pause. We would just, and then one day we'd be 60, but we'd be exactly the same from 38 till 60. Something would happen at 60, I don't know, a switch would be turned. That's not what happens. There's also another group of us that are still child-free or want children in our late 30s and our 40s. So how can you tell me that my fertility is declining, my estrogen is disappearing, when my mother does not have enough grandchildren yet? And she reminds me all the time, right? How can you tell me that these things are happening? The other challenge is that, I don't know if it's the same for some of you, but for my mother's generation, this is something they never talked about. So my mother doesn't want to talk to me about menopause because she can't accept that I am now an old woman, right? And I'm not an old woman, I'm a baby girl. We're not having this, you know? Exactly, I told you, we're baby girls, but it happens to baby girls as well. So one of the things that is sadly, as you start learning about this, you're now facing the denial, you're saying, hey, something is happening. There isn't a lot of information out there. One, because the information is targeted to women in their 60s. Two, because science just hasn't caught up. For some of us that are younger, I want to go to a doctor and I want to take a test for my hormones. And I want that test to say, at this stage you're perimenopause, at this stage you're menopausal. That doesn't exist, people. If there are women in STEM here, please help us develop these tests so that by the time some of you in your 20s are there, this test will exist, but right now they don't exist, right? So because there's a lack of information about all the symptoms, there's a lack of information even at the hospital level, at the doctor level. You come in, you complain of sleep, they say, maybe you're just tired, maybe it's work. They're not connecting the dots, yeah. That is perimenopause. So what do? I'm here to tell you, especially the younger women in this room, there's a lot of hope. You can fight back. Do not take this, do not hear this word aging and start freaking out and start buying, creams and lotions and trying to get liposuction. You can fight back in many ways. Personally, I started researching a lot of natural therapies just because I don't think I can afford HRT for the next 15 years if it's not covered, under a government health plan. I just don't think that's manageable. But you can do things like really focus on your sleep. You can do things like focus on your diet, unfortunately. Things like alcohol, you'll have to cut. Your body will let you know, by the way. Anyone here who knows, your body one day will just say, we're done with alcohol, and then you just have to accept. I can see someone's head going down, yes. But you can fight back. Community is really, really important, and this is what's so great about Women's Health Cafe. Have this conversation with your friends, have this conversation with your aunts, have this conversation with your moms, and get ahead of this. I think the disservice that our parents' generation did is that this was something that they hid. This was something that we hush-hush, we didn't want people to know about because there's still stigma about aging. But we can still keep glowing up even with this. This is just part of the journey. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden we've turned, gray hairs are popping out on our head. So that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you, Mokambi. So those are the representatives of the Women's Health Cafe. We have very many stories in that space.